and welcome to Math Blossoms, where growing in mathematics is natural. Today's lesson topic is integers, multiplying and dividing. Let's get prepared for today. All right, we're going to need a pencil with an eraser. We also need some paper to take notes and an optional calculator if you would like to self-check. Don't forget to pause the video and try to answer the questions from time to time on your own before I show you the answer. That is the best way to learn, is to try it on your own first. Also, feel free to rewind the video if you need to review anything before taking or trying to answer any of the questions. All right, so before we go over our vocabulary, I am Miss G, and we're going to start today's lesson by just taking some deep breaths. We're going to do 3 deep breaths in our nose, and we're going to breathe out our mouth. We're going to hold it for a 3 count. Okay, so let's go ahead and breathe in our nose first. Hold it for 1, 2, 3. Breathe out your mouth. Okay, let's breathe in our nose. Hold it for 1, 2, 3. Breathe out. Okay, one more time. Breathe in our nose. Hold it for 1, 2, 3, and breathe out. All right, very good. Now let's look and see what vocabulary words we're going to be studying today. But before we do, I just want to talk a little bit about perseverance. Okay, perseverance is something that we use when we are learning math. We use it when we are trying to do anything that may be a little challenging for us. So it means to keep trying to do something even if it is difficult, or if you have to wait or use patience to achieve the success. Most of your successful people will tell you that many times they try and fail several times before they achieve the success that they're striving for. This takes a quality called perseverance, and mathematics is like that for many people. Most people, to be honest, need to really try over and over again to understand it, and then eventually it does get a little easier, but you need that perseverance in order to achieve those goals. Let's look at the tiny seed. The tiny seed knew that in order to grow, it needed to be dropped in the dirt, covered in darkness, and struggled to reach the light. So just like a flower growing, you need that perseverance. You need to, it's called grappling with the math, or the common math struggle. A lot of times we struggle at first to understand it, but that's okay, because eventually we will. If you are a human being, you can learn math. Okay. Integers are numbers that are whole numbers. 0 is included, both positive and negative. The positive sign is a plus sign. However, we usually don't write the plus sign. It is an understood positive number if the negative symbol is not located there. And the negative symbol is like a little minus sign that's right next to the number on the left side of the number. Opposites are numbers that are the same. One is positive and one is negative. When we add opposites, they create a 0. Product is the answer we get when we multiply numbers. A number line is what we use to help us learn integers, and number lines are good at showing the positive side on the right and the negative side on the left, with 0 being in the center. Quotient is the answer we get when we divide numbers. An absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. Basically, it's kind of like looking at the number without thinking about the sign of that number. So distance from 0 is always represented as a positive number. However, you can just think of it as the number that represents how far that number is located from 0 on a number line. So like -3, for instance, is 3 spaces from the 0. Even though it's on the negative side, it's still only 3 spaces from the 0. So the absolute value of -3 would be a 3. All right, our lesson essential questions for today is recall and write down the adding and subtracting integer rules. And I know that this video is about multiplying and dividing, but Adding and subtracting is just as important, and you should have watched that video prior to watching this one. So hopefully this will help you recall those rules so that you don't get them confused with the multiplying and dividing integer rule. What are the two rules for multiplying and dividing integers? And explain how you can tell if the product will be positive or negative when multiplying more than two integers. So there is a little trick you can use to determine if the answer is going to be positive or negative when you have long like lists of numbers that you're multiplying together all at once. Okay, let's review what an integer is. Integers are rational numbers that include all whole numbers that are positive and negative, and also 0, which has no sign. So examples would be 5, 0, -7, 3, -12, -8, and 44. So again, you can have a negative fraction, like a -1/2, but a negative fraction is not considered an integer. An integer is only the whole numbers that are positive and negative, and of course 0. Okay, also let's review the adding and subtracting integers. Let me pull out my pointer here. Okay, so here we have to add integers. Remember the song. So let's look down here at the song. It says, same sides, add and keep, different signs, subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Well, that bigger number there is the bigger absolute value. So let's look at these addition problems. We've got -8 plus 5. These are different signs, so we don't add, we subtract. They've got the absolute value of -8 is 8, absolute value of 5 is 5. After we find the difference, which is 3, we check to see which one has the absolute value that is the largest, which of course is the -8. And since the -8 has the larger absolute value, we're going to keep the negative symbol that's on the 8 on our answer, that's 3. Okay. To subtract integers, and of course if the signs are the same, let me go back to adding real quick. When the signs are the same, we just simply add them and keep the sign, like 2 positives equal a positive answer, or 2 negatives added together equal a negative answer. Okay, to subtract integers, we change the subtraction sign to addition, then change the number after it to its opposite. This is called the keep, change rule, but you're essentially adding the opposite of the number you're trying to subtract. And this is true for any subtraction problem. You're always going to add the opposite sign of the number that you're subtracting. So go ahead and change that that minus there to a plus, and then the positive 5 turns into a -5. And when that happened, then we go back to the addition rules and we see that the signs are the same, so we just add them and keep the sign. Okay, so adding and subtracting integers can be a little challenging. However, multiplying and dividing integers are typically a lot easier for most students. And the reason being is that there's one rule that applies, or actually there's 2 rules, but they apply to both multiplying and dividing. So it's kind of like they share their integer qualities. Multiplying and dividing integers, if the signs are the same, then the result is positive. So if I'm dividing or if I'm multiplying, if the signs are the same, my answer is positive. And this can be a little tricky because if you think about it, let me pull my pen out here. If you think about it, 2 times 5 is 10, of course, and then 2 plus 5 is 7, right? So let me write 2 plus 5. Now I'm putting an addition problem up here just so we can compare. Okay, so notice signs the same, positive answer, signs the same, positive answer on this addition. But when it comes to something like different signs over here, well, let's do negative signs. So we have a -2, and let's say we're going to multiply it times a -5. Okay, so -2 times -5, that's actually going to give me the same answer, a +10, because the rule states that if the signs are the same, the answer is positive. This is not true, though, when we add these together. So notice if I add the -2 and the that should be a 5, not a 7. When I add the -2 and the -5 together, I'm going to get a -7. So again, this can be a little tricky for some people to understand that when it's addition, your answer is negative when both terms are negative. But when it's multiplication, when both terms are negative, you end up with a positive. So it can be a little bit confusing. So just remember, if it's multiplying and or dividing, you're going to keep a positive answer if both terms are the same, whether they're positive or negative. Now, if the signs are different, the answer is always negative. That's not true for addition, but it's true for multiplying and dividing. Okay? Memorize the 2 rules for multiplying and dividing integers. So if they have the same signs, you're going to get a positive answer. If they have different signs, then you're going to get a negative answer. This rule here tends to be a little simpler to remember than the addition rules that we just went over here. So it is imperative that you know all 4 rules. And the first thing you should always look at when you're dealing with integers is, what is the operation? Is it adding? Is it subtracting? Or is it multiplying? Or is it dividing? Okay, so here's another little trick. If you're multiplying 2 integers or more together, let's just read it here. When you have more than 2 integers that you need to multiply, the order of operations is important. So you go from the left to the right when you're multiplying or dividing integers. But here is a good strategy to remember. Count the number of negative terms that you have in the original problem. Now, this is when you're multiplying, okay? Multiplying. So if you have like a long string of numbers, like right here, I've got 2 times 2 times -2 times -2, and I can add more to that. I can go on and on and on. But we're just going to stop it with 4 terms here. Let's say you had a whole bunch of terms like this. A quick way to remember if the answer is going to be positive or negative is to count the number of negative terms. So I see that in this one, I've got 1, 2 negative terms, okay? 2 is an even number. So when I have an even number of negative terms, my answer is going to be positive, okay? And then if I have an odd number, like in this case, I have a -2 here, here, and here. So I have 3 negative terms. That's an odd number. So now that I have odd number of negative terms in my sequence there, my answer is going to be a negative. Okay, so going back to this rule here, you know, same signs, positive answer, different signs, negative answer. Well, if you end up with, you know, something like this, you know, they're all different signs. So you immediately think, well, it's going to be a negative answer, but it's not, because if you go left to right, for instance, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay. 4 times this -2 gives me this -8. And then the last -2 multiplied times this -8 gives me that +16, because a negative times a negative gives me a positive. So in fact, this little trick here, by counting the number of negatives, does work when you have a long string of numbers that you're multiplying together. All right, so now let's look at some of these multiplying and dividing integers using a number line. So let's look at this one first. When you're using a number lines and you're multiplying or dividing, the trick is to group the numbers up, right? So here we have -4 times +5. Now, if you know your integer rules, you know that that's going to be -4 times 5, which is a -20, because the signs are different. But when you're using a number line, you basically this is asking you to create 5 groups of -4. So if I'm starting here at the 0 and move -4 spaces, I'm going to end up there. But I need to do this 5 times. So like this would be my first group of -4, my second group, third, fourth, and fifth, and I end up there at the -20. Okay, here's a division problem, negative 8 divided by 2. Negative 8 in this case is divided into groups of 2, which gives a result of negative 4. So again, we started at 0. We have a group of negative 2, another group of negative 2, another group of negative 2, and another group of negative 2. And notice there are 4 of those groups, and they're all on the negative side. So our answer is negative 4. We have a grouping here of negative 2's, and it looks like there are 3 groups of negative 2. So that represents the problem negative 2 times 3, because there's 3 groups of negative 2. And of course, that's negative 6 is the answer. Then we have one last one here where we have 2 groups of negative 3. So that would be the same as saying negative 3 times 2, because there's 2 groups of negative 3, which also ends up at negative 6. All right, so now it's your turn to try and grow a blossom. So let's first try to recall the rule for multiplying integers to solve the following integer problems. Okay, so we're going to first try to multiply 4 times negative 5, and then negative 4 times negative 9. So I'm asking you to pause, and I'm going to count to 3, and you can try to answer that on your own. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the answer to the first one is negative 20, because the signs are different. So again, when you're multiplying and dividing integers, if the signs are different, the answer is negative. When the signs are the same, the answer is positive. And notice in negative 4 times negative 9, these signs are the same, so the answer ended up being positive. Okay, let's try to grow a blossom number 2. Find the product of the following integers. Product means multiply, so we're going to go with negative 3 times negative 8, and also negative 4 times positive 9. So I'm asking you to pause, and I will count to 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the first answer is positive 24. The signs are the same, so the answer is positive. And the second one, the answer is negative 36, because the first term is negative, the second is positive, and when the signs are different, our answer is negative. Okay, now let's try to recall the rule for dividing integers to solve the following integer problems. So what is 15 divided by negative 5? And also negative 63 divided by negative 9. So go ahead and pause, and I will count to 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the first one is going to be a negative 3. The signs are different, so the answer is negative. And negative 63 divided by negative 9, those signs are the same, so we're going to have a positive 7 as our answer. All right, find the quotient of the following integers. Remember, quotient means to divide. So asking you to pause, and I will count. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the first answer is negative 6, because positive and negative means the signs are different. When the signs are different and you're dividing, you're going to get a negative answer. Same with this one. You have the same signs, negative 49 and negative 7. When the signs are the same, the answer is positive. All right, let's try to pause and answer the essential question. Recall and write down the adding and subtracting integer rules. So see if you can remember, and you can write it in your own words. Maybe the song might help you. Try to remember how to add and subtract those integers. Okay, let's go ahead and answer. And again, if you want to pause and take more time to answer this question, that's perfectly fine. To add integers with the same sign, add them and keep the sign that they already have. To add integers with different signs, subtract them by finding the difference, and then keep the sign of the number that has the largest absolute value. To subtract integers, add the opposite of the number that you are subtracting, or the rule is also called keep, change, change. Keep the first term, change the subtraction to its opposite, which is addition, and then change the second term, the one that you're subtracting, to its opposite sign. Okay, the second pause and answer the essential question is, what are the two rules for multiplying and dividing integers? So I'm going to ask you to pause and try to answer that one. All right, so the two rules for multiplying and dividing integers: if they have the same signs, your answer will be positive. If they have different signs, the answer will be negative. All right, explain how you can tell if the product will be positive or negative when multiplying more than two integers. So again, this is like when you have a long string of numbers you're multiplying. How can you tell if the answer is going to be positive or negative? So go ahead and try to pause and answer that one. All right, so count the number of negative terms in the original problem. If you have an even number of negative terms in the problem, you will get a positive answer. If you have an odd number of negative terms in the problem, you will get a negative answer. Well, all right, we are almost done. We're going to review our vocabulary words one more time. And our first word is integer, which are all of the positive and negative whole numbers, including 0. We have a positive sign or symbol, which is usually not showing next to positive numbers, but sometimes you will see them. So just so you know, it is a little plus sign in front of the number. And then a negative symbol is the little negative subtraction looking symbol that's in front of the number. Opposites are numbers that are the same but have different signs. So like a positive 3 and a negative 3, those added together always equal 0. And the product is the answer we get when we multiply problems or multiply terms together. And then a number line is what we can use to help us learn integers, because it shows the positive numbers on one side of the 0 and the negative numbers on the left side of the 0. Quotient is the answer that we get when we divide numbers. And then the absolute value is the value of the number based on its distance from 0. So just count the spaces a number is from 0 on a number line, and that is its absolute value. All right, well done. A bouquet of math blossoms have opened up in your mind to further improve your math language skills. Remember to practice every day, study 10 minutes daily, ask for help if needed, and learn from the mistakes that you make, and always do your best, always try. All right, I'm Miss G, and I want to thank you for watching today's Math Blossom video. The next video in this series is to review fractions. So you may want to try watching the adding and subtracting fractions video first, and then after that, the multiplying and dividing fractions video. Just a little refresher on how to do those before we start doing equations later. All right, I'm Miss G, and I want to take this time to say thank you, and it was lovely teaching you math today. Bye.